It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from the largest city in the whole world. Didn't know that, did you? The great capital city of Jakarta, of Indonesia, the fourth largest country in the world's largest Muslim country, an archipelago of 4,000 islands. In an ideal world, I'd be talking to you tonight about Indonesia, about Southeast Asia. I'd be talking to you about the 350-year colonial imperialist occupation by little Holland of this vast archipelago. But I can't, because other more pressing, more deadly, more fatal and more approximate reasons for talking tonight about the deadly degeneracy of the United States of America and about the piracy in the Caribbean, with Donald Trump seizing yet another oil tanker. About Smotrich announcing 19 new illegal settlements in the West Bank, 69 settlements in the next 3 years. And nobody said a word of condemnation about it. And of Netanyahu trying to press gang Donald Trump into a new round of war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the rapid advances of the Russian armed forces in Ukraine. Alas, poor Indonesia, you'll have to take second place tonight at least to these vital and pressing issues. Stay with me. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
My apologies if jet lag in any way hampers my appearance this evening. Gayatri's jet lagged too, and she's had to look after 5 of my children all day instead of having a brief nap like I was able to do. And forgive us this rudimentary studio space. It's like Milton Keynes on steroids for regular listeners, or at least on plant-based supplements. But we'll do better come Wednesday with proper studio space, I hope. But the truth is, the pressing issues of this day are so pressing that it doesn't feel much like Christmas at all. The danger of war is stalking the globe, stalking continent after continent. And the reason for it, the overwhelming reason for it, is the political degeneracy of the United States of America. And that political degeneracy is on full, stark view this weekend. I'm talking about the fact that the entire political and media class, the yapping dogs of the media chorus who shadow every footstep and write every word without contradiction of their political masters, are this weekend sunk in disgrace. Sunk in the disgrace of their unbelievable attachment to a fraudster, a con man, a spy, a blackmailer, a man who was working for multiple intelligence agencies to gather as much video material of the debased and debauched sexual tastes and actions of the American political class as possible, the better to blackmail them, to extort them for political favours and for political direction later. The whole political class, and the efforts by Donald Trump and his administration to somehow cloak his degrading and degraded relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for decades, not when they were single playboys together in New York. They weren't single and they weren't playboys. They were sordid sexual exploiters of tiny little girls who turn out from the photographs to have been even younger than we had earlier anticipated. The efforts of Donald Trump to cloak his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein by splodges of black ink in redaction. I mean, I was looking at that famous cover of the Beatles walking across that zebra crossing in Abbey Road. That's what this looks like, the cover of the Beatles album, Abbey Road. This looks ridiculous. And of course it is ridiculous. And every redaction merely makes matters worse for those names that have been hidden by the redaction. And it's now being claimed by the Trump administration, which has variously claimed that the Epstein affair was such a gigantic scandal that you had to elect Donald Trump to get to the bottom of it. He was going to drain the swamp, you'll remember. And then when, perhaps to him, unexpectedly, actually allowed to win an election, to come back as president again, he realized that actually if he did drain the swamp, he'd be sending himself down the plug hole too, because there can be few, maybe one or two, maybe Peter Mandelson, maybe Alan Dershowitz, but other than them, there can be few political figures still active and influential in the world today with a closer relationship to this pervert, this degenerate Jeffrey Epstein than Donald Trump. And to think that you are somehow going to lessen the pressure by accepting, as he had to, with apparent good grace, a decision of the US Congress setting a deadline for the full disclosure of all the Epstein files, only to A, release them looking like a zebra crossing on steroids, and that you were not going to be able to comply with a judgment that was given by the Congress 30 days ago, and the Attorney General Pam Bondi is now facing impeachment. Donald, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to go away because you call it a hoax. It was a hoax a couple of weeks ago. Now it's a national security matter that all these redactions, this blizzard of black ink on white paper is a national security issue. I'll tell you this, Donald. Any nation that needs to protect pedophiles to defend its national security is not a nation that deserves national security. Any country, any state that has to protect all of these senior politicians and media men from the disclosure of their sordid, degenerate behavior is not a political and media class that deserves to exist. And that is surely the problem. Because it's not about red ties or blue ties. Of course not. Bill Clinton, there he is there, lounging in a pool with someone doing God knows what to his cigar as he lies there. Bill Clinton, Dershowitz, Brooks of the New York Times, the liberal elite were all deeply involved with Epstein and taking money for them. Even the so-called leftist Noam Chomsky was on the closest possible terms with Jeffrey Epstein, taking money from him, taking rides on his private jet, unconsciously or maybe surreptitiously channeling Epstein's political views on the Israel-Palestine struggle. In exchange for what, Noam? It's a pity you can't now speak for yourself, but if you can hear, you are in as much disgrace this evening as Bill Clinton and as Alan Dershowitz and all the others involved, Peter Mandelson, Richard Branson, all these people that, Bill Gates. Bill Gates only used to have dinner with Jeffrey Epstein. He had dinner so many times, his wife left him because she couldn't bear what was happening at the dinners. And in the disclosure that we now have, there's Bill Gates with women who are blacked out. And the rules of the game are that the only people being blacked out are victims. So Bill Gates, who were these victims? And while you were in your stentorian way lecturing the rest of us about COVID, about vaccines, when you were lecturing us about overpopulation, when you were plotting in the WEF anti-population drives, you were in bed, so to speak, with one of the most debased sex criminals ever in the history of the United States. I could go on, but time is of the essence. The fact that red ties, blue ties, New York or California, it all made no difference. Mariafarmer, once of this parish, a great friend of this show, she's changed her telephone number or she'd be on the show tonight. Mariafarmer, in 1999, reported Ghislainemaxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's sordid behavior towards her as a minor to the FBI. And thanks God, because a lot of people said she was crazy, you know. They said it to me, why have you got Mariafarmer on? She's crazy. But she wasn't crazy. She was telling the truth. They said the FBI never got any warning from her at all, but now we have it in black and white and not redacted, in words on paper. Mariafarmer reporting Ghislainemaxwell more than 25 years ago, reporting Jeffrey Epstein more than 25 years ago for attempted rape of this young girl who had so foolishly, for the sake of her art, she's a wonderful painter, accepted an invitation to go to their ranch in Arizona, but it wasn't paintings or etchings they were interested in. It was her young, nubile, and entirely innocent body. Now, if the FBI had acted in 1999, how many of these victims would now be hale and hearty, instead of suicided, instead of anorexic, instead of suffering from mental illness? How many of these victims and how many of these men would not have been led by Epstein and Maxwell and filmed for the delectation of who knows whom in chanceries, in the headquarters of intelligence organizations thereafter? Well, it's a sorry tale, and it isn't over yet. Every one of these redactions will live to see the light. Every one of these people will live to be disgraced in eternal darkness. Every single one of the intelligence agencies, the CIA and Mossad particularly, but anything that's in the eyes of the CIA and Mossad is in the eyes of MI6 and MI5, of the Australian, New Zealand and Canadian security and intelligence services also. It's a great pity that our security services was not paying more attention, but they were busy, too busy, picking up grandmothers with cardboard placards expressing their opposition to genocide in Palestine, about which I am now going to briefly turn. The Israeli government has just announced 19 new settlements in the West Bank, internationally recognized occupied territory, and internationally recognized nascent political statehood. Palestine statehood. The West Bank and the Gaza Strip are the state of Palestine, so-called, that all these governments in the world, including the British, just recognized at the United Nations a couple of months ago. Now, I'm one of those that's been telling you for years that the West Bank is not capable of sustaining a Palestinian state, because there's 800,000 illegal settlers living there already, with all their Jews-only settler roads and their apartheid walls and their crossings. If Mary and Joseph were on a donkey heading from Nazareth to Jerusalem and diverted to Bethlehem today, well, they wouldn't get past first base, if you know what I mean. But Smotrich's announcement today will take the number of settlers to over 1 million, will take the real estate values of these settlements, which are actually cities, shining cities on Palestinian hills, with geysers watering lawns and sprinklers, filling swimming pools and duck ponds, leaving the people of the West Bank with scarce enough water to drink, never mind to irrigate their olive trees, which will in any case, once they fructify, be destroyed by these very same illegal settlers. So when I told you, as I did, and over again, that all of these countries, including Britain, that were recognizing a Palestinian state, were recognizing a chimera, which could not possibly, topographically, demographically, and politically, could not possibly become a Palestinian state. You all told me I was either a dreamer, dreaming as I do, of one democratic state between the river and the sea, where all the Jews, all the Muslims, and all the Christians live as equal citizens before the law and under a constitution, with one man, one woman, one vote. Hey, what a dreamer I am! But it was you that was dreaming. It was you that was dreaming that all this flurry of diplomatic balderdash was somehow going to lead to a peaceful resolution of the ancient, now Palestine-Israel conflict. More than 100 years the Palestinian people have been suffering from this. And it just got worse, much worse. Now, I'll be talking about Epstein. I'll be talking about Gaza and Palestine. I'll be talking about the putative war that Netanyahu is lobbying Donald Trump to back against Iran. But the most pressing of all the international conflicts has to be the one in which Donald Trump, like a drunken sailor, like a drunken pirate, like a brigand, no beard, the pirate, Donald Trump, is swaggering around the Caribbean like a man drunk on rum. He is acting as an utterly lawless brigand, but he's also risking the peace of the world. This is not a little local difficulty over whether America has the right to shoot and kill unknown people because they're in a rubber boat without being able to provide even their names, never mind their pack drill. This is not a little local matter in some obscure corner of Latin America. No. This is threatening the peace of the world because 2 of the 3 tankers that Donald Trump illegally seized today are Chinese oil tankers. I think you can say, in the words of the old song, there may be trouble ahead. And you've come to the right place to hear it analysed. It's the mother of all talk shows, and it's the coolest cat, Garland Nixon, up right after this. Stay tuned. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me 1 brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, it's almost 2:30 in the morning where I am, but good evening to all of you, and good morning to people even farther away than me, the people of Australia, who are the latest to be beaten up by Benjamin Netanyahu 3 times since the massacre at Bondi Beach. It is funny how 16 people is rightly described as a massacre when it's on Bondi Beach, a great terrorist crime when it's on Bondi Beach, but 400 Palestinians have been murdered in Gaza, and it's called a ceasefire. Make of that what you will. Is the Epstein Files cover-up to protect Trump? Duh, Do bears defecate in the woods? Is the Pope a Catholic? A light just fell down in the woods, but you didn't see it. So, did it really happen? Because it's back again now. Is the Epstein Files cover-up to protect Donald Trump? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll. And you can vote on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my channel. It's very important in our ceaseless struggle with Mr. Algorithm. You get me? And please give thumbs up to the show. And if you are one of the creme de la creme, the vanguard, the avant-garde, who support me on patreon.com/George Galloway, you can also vote there. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522. And the international number, the worldwide number, is 0044203 966 2625. I've missed him, you know. I miss him on Twitter, where he's still locked out to the best of my knowledge. But I miss him because so much time has elapsed since we last heard his beautiful dark brown voice and pondered how great it would be if Garland Nixon could be in political office in the United States. He's not for now, but he is therefore able to speak with us. Speaking of red ties and blue ties, I see you're wearing your Republican colours, Garland. It's not been a great day for the red team. It's not been a great week for the red team in Washington, has it?
No, but I think that what we're looking at, particularly with the Epstein files, is far bigger than the blue or red team. In fact, I'll say this. If I were answering your poll, I would try to find a way to answer yes and no. For this reason, you know, what we saw evidence of things that we already either knew or suspected. Jeffrey Epstein, one of his closest business partners and friends was an Israeli prime minister. He was involved in spreading and acquiring technology for Israel. He was involved in, weapons laundering, gun running, you name it. And every single time it comes back to Israel. So I think we have a pretty good idea who was behind the Epstein island debacle, as it were, intelligence operation. So to some extent, can we say that there's things that they may want to hide wherein Donald Trump was involved? But I would say this: the people who are behind this would much prefer that we discuss this through the lens of partisanship, through the lens of, was Donald Trump on there, was Bill Clinton on there, was Garland Nixon on the island, whoever. I think they'd rather us have this discussion than the truth, which is our collective governments, which I would say are the British, the U.S., and at minimum, and the Israelis, were involved in child trafficking, child prostitution, and God only knows what else.
Well, I mean, Garland, you, of course, make a devastatingly important point, and believe me, I fully intended to go there with you. But first, I'd like your genuine view. You can educate me out of mine. These kind of obfuscations, this kind of disruptive and reckless frustration of the process of Congress, which told them that on Friday they had to publish in full all these files. They didn't publish all the files, and the files they did publish look ludicrous. They are redacted to the point of absurdity. And my point is, not only is that not a good look, it will not stand, it will not hold, it will merely fuel this issue, probably for the rest of Trump's presidency. And when the dam breaks after Trump leaves office, this is going to run and run, isn't it?
Yes, I certainly agree with you 100%. I think what we're looking at here now is a system that has to make a decision, right? It's kind of like triage, like when there's a multiple deaths and they have to look at one person and say, this person has a better chance to survive, and so we'll deal with this person. What they're looking at now is, okay, if we release this stuff, the truth, what's the damage, and if we continue to obfuscate and try and continue to go against what we know we have to do, what do we suffer? And I think they've made a determination that they really can't afford to let the truth out. That it's like the government will almost fall. What will the American people do if they find? What will the British people do if they find out the truth about this? So they're in a situation where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. And I think they figured out now that they won't. They know that the American people now really don't. I'll be honest. I didn't expect them to tell the truth. I expected something similar to this. In fact, let me add this. Think about the JFK files. The law said they had to release these after a certain number of years, and they still haven't released them. And of course, even in that instance, there are numerous rumors that the documents that haven't been released regarding the JFK files are also related to Israel in some manner. So I think we see a consistent pattern here.
Yeah. Well, Ben Shapiro would say the JFK case was a very long time ago. On the other hand, a promise that was made 3,000 years ago, according to a book written by themselves, well, that is as good as a title deed, but I digress. But you take me back to Israel, about which I spoke in my monologue, and it is surely even the most myopic American citizen, the most myopic American policymaker, influencer, must have noticed by now that Israel's like the bad penny that keeps turning up in all of these scandals, as it surely is central to the Epstein affair, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And what's interesting is Israel is now central to American politics in a way that it never has been before, in that the two principal parties now are wrought with infighting. Certainly, the Democratic Party recently has announced that they will not be releasing the document. Apparently, after they lost in the last election, apparently they did some kind of research to figure out why they lost. They came up with a document, and they're not going to release it. Well, certainly in that document, the numbers that have been released elsewhere show that upwards of 30% of the people that voted for Joe Biden that wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris, it was due to the genocide in Gaza. So they certainly can't release that document. It would either have to be in there, or it would be quite conspicuous that they left it out. Meanwhile, which I think is very healthy, the Republican Party, insiders are at each other's throats, as Ben Shapiro versus Megynkelly versus even the pro-Zionists are fighting, Tuckercarlson, etc. And I think the Republican Party is having at it over Israel. And the big fear, something that I've been actually reporting on and talking about for a while, the big fear that I think the machine has in America is that a number of anti-Zionist candidates will be challenging some of the traditional politicians, and there's a likelihood that some of them will win. And will we get the Romania treatment when democracy decides that anti-Zionists should win a seat? I have my doubts as to whether or not either of these parties are going to allow people to win who are opposed to the domination of the Israeli government over both the U.S. and all of Europe.
Yeah, but I mean, Ceausescu had no intention of letting the people win either when he went out on that balcony on this day in 1989. And I wrote a book about these events called Downfall with my good friend Bob Wiley, Downfall, the Ceausescus and the Romanian Revolution. When he went out on that balcony, he had no idea that the last straw had been loaded on the camel's back and that the back was about to break. I'm wondering about watching again the Ceausescu moment, whose anniversary is today. I wonder if there is a possibility that a reckoning is coming not just for your leaders, and heaven knows they need it, but the leaders in Europe who are pursuing a national suicidal policy. It's not suicidal for them, they're quids in, but it is literally committing suicide as a continent, as nation states. I'm wondering if the Romanian people could do it, why can't we?
Well, I think that that is right now on the horizon for Europe. I think that, unfortunately, there's not just a possibility, but a probability of political unrest and violence coming soon. Because, if we're honest about it, the European bloc has effectively collapsed as a modern political entity. This is not a modern political entity, much less a liberal democracy, because in order to be a reasonable political entity, there has to be some connection between the masses, between the working class, and the leadership. They have to have some kind of connection. In Brussels, the leadership was talking about how they could literally borrow money so they could go in debt. And as I always say, what's the definition of a debt? It is a claim on future earnings or a claim on future income. So they were selling the future of Europe for a war that's already lost, that probably won't be able to be financed more than a few months. At the same time, the farmers, the people who put food in people's mouths, were outside on the street screaming, basically begging for mercy from these same people. And I guess their response was not to cover it in the news, to hide it. So yes, Europe has already collapsed as a modern political entity. It's just a matter of how this thing plays out. And unfortunately, I'll add this, for the European people, by the time they get these lunatics out of office, they're going to be in debt for the next 100 years.
Well, you say 100 years, we literally are. We've signed a document with a leather-bound folder with Zelensky, who won't be there this time next year, with Ukraine, which will not be the state that it was this time next year. But we are committed, in writing, in treaty form, to give them 3 billion British pounds for the next 100 years. Who does that? Who makes political decisions for the next 100 years? What madmen are they?
Clearly, the political class of in Europe are no longer rational actors. And in fact, they're the most isolated political group on earth, in that they are isolated from both Russia and China. They were at odds with Russia, and they're always preaching against China. They're at odds with their own constituents, because almost all of them now have approval ratings far below 20%. And of course, they're at a rhetorical and philosophical war with the government of the United States. Who's on these people's sides? Their people hate them. The U.S. government hates them. They hate the Russians and the Chinese. This is a political and an economic isolation that I've never seen before in my life, voluntarily at that.
Beautifully expressed. I wish I'd said it, and you can be sure that I will. The promise to seize Russian assets foundered on the rocks of our new hero, the Prime Minister of Little Belgium. The war on their own people that you describe so eloquently is, of course, not only an economic war of national suicide, but a political, a civil liberties. You're a man that used to be very prominent in those affairs. Civil liberties virtually extinct now in the European Union space. And of course, I include Britain, which voted to leave the European Union, but only so we could behave just as stupidly and beastly as them. I'm in exile, Gayatri's in exile, Jacques Baud, a Swiss army colonel who used to advise NATO, has just now been non-personed and stuck in limbo. He's a Swiss citizen, though Switzerland isn't in the EU, but because he was in Brussels when this pronunciamento came from the lips of von der Leyen, He's now marooned in Brussels. Can't go to Switzerland, for that would require flying over or travelling across European Union territory. And his assets have been seized. A citizen of a non-EU country has his assets seized by the EU for what? For words, for speaking. You know, my father-in-law is very anxious, of course, about me and Gayatri's situation. He was questioning me closely, as any father-in-law would do. What's happened? How have I got his daughter into trouble? I had to reassure him that when they say hostile acts against the British state, they mean words. They don't mean a smoking cannonball. They don't mean even a pebble. They don't mean the slightest physical or kinetic harm of any kind. What they mean is words. Gayatri and I are speaking words that they don't like, which they can then define as harming the national security of Great Britain, a country that I have been born in, lived in, and had hoped to die in. So civil liberty, liberal democracy, all the guff they told us for decades, for half a century, that they represented, it's all in ruins, Garland.
You know, or perhaps it's not that it's in ruins, it's perhaps that we never had them in the first place. You know, if you feel that you have the right to free speech, as long as you say things that doesn't bother the government too much, and as soon as you start saying things that they're really concerned with, they say you can't do that. The fact was, you never really had the free speech that you thought you had. You just weren't threatening enough that they had to clamp down on them. I mean, recently, yes, you probably know, I spent some time in Russia and Belarus and other places, and after that I thought, you know, I don't really want to fly to Europe for any reason now, because after going there, you know, they may suspect me as some kind of an agent, and I may never make it back. It makes sense to me that people who live in an absurd narrative such as them, they don't live in the kinetic world that we live in. They live in a world of metaphysical realities, you know, where they talk about things, and therefore, because they say the Russians are running out of missiles and they say the Russians are losing, that means they must be losing. People who live in that kind of world where the only thing that matters is narratives, their concern would be things that you say, because they don't live in a world of physical things. They just make something up, and that's the reality. That's why they're so concerned with censorship, with what people say, with shutting down various narratives, because they don't have artillery and hypersonic missiles and air defense. All they have is a narrative and some NAFO trolls on Twitter. And that's all they have to fight with. So that's where their concerns are. But I suspect that people who are this politically estranged from their constituents, that their time is short and they know it. What we're seeing is, you know, the last howls of a dying mule or whatever it is. They're on their way out. And we're seeing these deranged acts as they head out, and these acts will only speed up their demise. And I think the people of Europe are going to be screaming for something to replace this soon. So I don't think they're going to be able to keep this up more than a year or so. And I suspect by midsummer, if not earlier, when this whole Ukraine project starts to go bad, that some of these people will be doing the Ashraf Ghani move from Afghanistan, heading for the airport with a pile of cash falling into the back of the boots of their cars.
If there's any left. Finally, Garland, and I'm grateful for your time. I feel like a bit of a chump. I didn't think that Donald Trump was going to attack and invade Venezuela. It's beginning to look like I'm wrong about that. What's your take?
Well, you know, from the very beginning, my position has been, I don't believe Donald Trump will invade Venezuela. Number one, Venezuela is 3 times the size of Vietnam, and 500,000 troops wouldn't get it done in Vietnam. 16,000 troops is not going to get it done. It's not a plausible, even a plausible number to present an option for a land invasion, number one. Number two, what are they going to do? Fly over, throw some bombs, throw maybe some missiles at Venezuela for a few weeks, and then what? It's a trap right now, I think, that Donald Trump is in, because if he attacks Venezuela with, might I add, a 30% support, according to the polls in the United States, and the day the first soldier dies, that's going to drop to 15%. So Donald Trump's in a situation where if he does it without the support of the people, and then Americans die, which I think is almost inevitable, the support will collapse, and then as will his presidency. So I don't think he attacks. He can't go to war with them, because airstrikes without a land invasion is not a war. So I don't think he can go to war with them. And even if he does airstrikes, it's so big. The country is so big, you could bomb a few areas, but I'm sure everything's hidden in the jungle. After they've been telling them for the last 2 months, that they were going to attack, I guarantee you those bases are empty of everything, and things are hidden and camouflaged under these triple canopy jungles. So I don't think there's much Donald Trump can do. I will say this. In a way, it's a trap, but not really, because Donald Trump doesn't think twice about backing out. Donald Trump will say, we're going to win, we're going to take them, and he'll wake up one morning and say, never mind, we're leaving. So maybe that's what happens. Donald Trump wakes up one morning and says, I changed my mind, let's leave. That's probably the great likelihood.
But look how reckless it's got. 2 of the 3 tankers seized this week are Chinese tankers. You're seizing sovereign, in one case, sovereign Chinese assets and oil that China has already paid for, and you're towing it to Florida. I mean, how can that possibly end well?
No, and I think at some point they're going to provoke China to the point where China looks at the deal that we have that's supposed to be a 1-year economic deal with China that allows the United States to access the rare earth minerals that it desperately needs, allows the U.S. to access these minerals that it desperately needs to continue its quest for to regain hegemony. I think if we keep provoking China, they're going to pronounce that deal dead. They pretty much said that we were kind of on trial to see how things work. So on any given day, China can just say, you know what, we've decided that you've taken our tanks. That's not part of the deal, so you get no rare earth minerals. Have a nice day. So it's absurd on its face. I don't think China will engage in a military engagement on this, but the bottom line is, what else is Trump going to do? If he can't do a military attack, it's kind of an economic attack. Again, I think he's painted himself into a corner, and he's doing things that aren't going to help in any way. It's a harassment act, but the Venezuelans have been dealing with sanctions and terrorism, CIA attacks for the last, 3 or 4 decades. I don't think a couple more months is going to change their minds and cause them to capitulate in any way, shape, or form.
Run, Garland, run. We need you in office. Thank you again for a dazzling survey of the world and US political situations. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. A quick break, then it's your calls all the way to the hour. Stay tuned. Full marks to you for your dogged persistence and your quiet and dignified insistence that you were right and I was wrong. I don't actually recall the clash that we had, but I would have to say that you are being proven right, and I am being proven to have hoped for things that have not transpired. Because I said all along, I repeated it 100 times, that the big enchilada, World War III, an intensification of American involvement in the Ukraine war, was more likely to happen under the Democrats, under President Kamala Harris, than under a renewed President Trump. And I'll go to the stake defending that position.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
You're watching the mother of all talk shows. It's coming up for 3 o'clock in the morning for me. I don't know about you, but a good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may happen to be. We are in Jakarta, in what Westerners maybe insultingly call the Far East. Depends where you're drawing the line from, whether something is near, middle, or far. But that's another story. Here's the poll for this evening. Is the Epstein Files cover-up to protect Donald Trump? Yes or no? 20,000 people nearly have voted. You've got about 40 minutes to get your vote in. And you can call the show. Of course, I'd be delighted to take your calls from wherever. And where else would I go to first but one of my own former bailiwicks in Huddersfield in England. Eddie in Huddersfield wants to talk about the hunger strikers in the British prisons. Go ahead, Eddie.
Hi, George. Thank you. Let me say to you that you're a beacon of light in a media dystopian situation, really, where there's lies and obfuscation, and you are a beacon of light in that, as they say. Could I also say that I enjoyed...
Thank you, my friend.
Bit of a contretemps with Morgan a month or two back, and as a result of the content of that, I think you ought to refer to him in the future as Organ Morgan, as in under notebook. Anyway, I was ringing really because as an Irishman who remembers the hunger strikers in the 1980s, I never thought I'd live to see 8 young people who've been convicted of nothing but starve themselves now for them over 40 days and on danger of dying, really. And a government led by so-called Labour people completely ignoring it. And not only that, but even worse, in fact, is the media have ignored it completely. And I think it's an absolute scandal. And anybody who thinks we're living in a democracy now really is living in cloud cuckoo land.
Well, beautifully put, Eddie. And you and I both remember the daily agony of the hunger strike in the north of Ireland, which murdered 10 men. The British state murdered 10 men. And Margaret Thatcher was the murderess. But Labour was a willing accomplice then. You see, I'm so old, I remember it all in vivid detail. I remember the Labour minister, former minister, then shadow minister, Roy Mason. I remember the former Labour minister, I spit his name, Don Concannon, who both visited Bobby Sands on his deathbed and lectured him that he needn't expect any sympathy from the Labour Party and that Labour would support Margaret Thatcher in the denial of the political status that these prisoners had formerly had and had been taken from them, and hence the hunger strike. They could not dream of counting on any sympathy from the hard hearts of Roy Mason, Barnsley and Don Concannon, I think elsewhere in Yorkshire. And they were dancing, as I put it at the time, on the graves on the deathbeds of these hunger strikers. And now it's happening all again. Past 40 days. You and I both know what 40 days means. We know the significance of a fast for 40 days. We know that damage to tissue and to overall health is in danger even if the fast were to end this evening. But this hunger strike is not going to end this evening. And what's the attitude? It's the same as Don Concannon and Roy Mason. It's the same hard-faced, stone heart that is being offered by Labour. And this time, it's not Margaret Thatcher who's committing the murder. It's Keir Starmer. Thanks, Eddie, for the opportunity to say that. If you want to call us, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Now you can call in, you can talk about all of the foregoing, you can talk about Venezuela, you can talk about the Epstein Files, you can talk about the hunger strikes in Ireland then and in the United Kingdom prison system today, and you can talk about the Palestine situation in its overarching sense in the wake of the Smotrich announcement today of 19 new illegal settlements in the West Bank and 69 new illegal settlements over the next 3 years. That is over the lifetime of Keir Starmer's government, unless we are very lucky. Now you can leave comments. You can scan the QR code on the corner of the screen now. You can leave a comment, and if it's good enough and if it's clean, I'll read it out on MOATS if I can get to it. Multi-Tom-Tom says PDF file 068 is missing. I know it was missing. I did read that it had been reinstated, but I'm ready to be corrected. Lee Argent says this is only 50% of the information we're seeing. I don't even want to see what 100% looks like. A very good point. Parish Crooks says we have enough names and faces to start investigating. Quit waiting for more. Gates, Clinton, Trump, Branson, Barack. Good start. And Ram Hasib says, hi, Mr. Galloway, could Russia or China escort the oil tankers? They absolutely could, but of course it would likely take us to the brink of World War III. The question is not whether they could, but whether they will. We'll know China's reaction in the next hours to the piracy they have suffered today. Abdullah Siraj says, why was Tom Artyom Alexandrovich allowed to return home after being arrested in the US for child predation? Is the Pope a Catholic? Let's go to Dennis in New York on the Kushner project for sunrise in Gaza. Looked dystopian enough to me, Dennis. How did it look to you?
Well, I think we can take some... Thank you for taking my call, George. I personally am taking some comfort, and I think we all can take some comfort in, being progressively able to dispense with any pretense that any conversation we have about Donald Trump, what his intentions or personality or psychological profile is, it's becoming increasingly easier to just dispense with any pretense of having any conversation, any rational conversation about anything that he does. And this Project Sunrise is just another clear example of that, as is all of the shenanigans in Venezuela and the peace talks in the Ukraine and on and on and on. So it just makes sense to look at this Project Sunrise to see what it is. I think it's just another nail in the coffin of what is becoming increasingly clear, and that is the collapse of European and, by extension, U.S. combined Western civilization, if you want to call it that. I've been talking about it for a long time. I think we just need to reconcile ourselves to that fact and prepare for the future. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. As difficult as that is.
I agree with that. And you will recall, as I do, Mr. Gandhi's famous riposte when asked by an American journalist what he thought of Western civilization. He answered after a brief pause, yes, that would be a good idea. What civilization is it that we are now lamenting the passing of? Of course, many great things happened in Europe. Many great things came from the United States of America, despite the state being founded on the mass annihilation of scores of millions of the original inhabitants, compounded by the taking of millions of Africans as slaves, in chains, sold as beasts of burden, bought and sold, not as human beings, but as mere chattels. Notwithstanding all of that, many great things happened in the United States, and much great output, industrial output, cultural output, sporting output, and the rest. I mean, nobody loved Muhammad Ali and Rocky Marciano more than me. I mean no hatred or disrespect for the American people, a very fine people, as I know from my personal acquaint. But if you look at the balance, as anyone must when reviewing accounts, if you look at the balance, you are led to the words of Oliver Cromwell dismissing the rump parliament. For all the good that you have been doing, in the name of God, man, go. It's time for the behemoths that trampled the world in their own interests for 500 years, beginning with the Portuguese, the Spanish, and of course many other empires. But they are now reached the stage, in the name of God, man, go. And that requires a new order to emerge. That requires the BRICS to step up. That requires the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to step up. It requires people to say, don't you dare seize my tanker. Don't you dare, Donald Trump. There will be severe consequences, Donald Trump, if you seize my oil and my tanker. Please heed this warning. That's what we need, Dennis, and I know that you would agree. Now, time to have a look at this evening's Wall of Fame. Have you made your donation yet to MOATS.tv on the website? A really important task I set you for the rest of this evening. Go to MOATS.tv and make a donation. Preferably a good one, but the smallest donation will still be gratefully received. A big thanks, though, to Richard Bramwell, Gary G., Walter Lipman, great name, Sally Soriano, and Wilma Williams. Thank you to all of you for your handsome donations. Please make sure your name is on the Wall of Fame. Scan that QR code now or visit the website moats.tv to get involved. Let's hear from Laurice in Manchester about the Workers' Party. Go ahead, Laurice.
Hi, George. Great to join you on today's show. Just want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the Workers' Party and you for all the great causes and great endeavours that the party and yourself have supported. As your previous caller mentioned, you are a light in a darkening world and an inspiration. In the UK, we currently have 2 or 3 mainstream parties, Labour, Conservative, and Liberal Democrats, and a few others that largely represent the same sorts of things. There are a few new parties like Reform and the Greens that have gained popularity. However, I'm sceptical that they will do anything much different, not to prejudge them, of course. There doesn't seem to be much alternative choice of governance. It's not just in the UK, either in the US, as Garland Nixon mentioned, of the the Republicans and the Democrats largely represent the same kind of policies. In the EU, it's a similar situation in France, Germany, and elsewhere, with mainstream parties representing the same kind of policies of neoliberal capitalism. There seems to be a serious lack of representation of working people's interests and a dire need for an alternative. I would like to mention that there are some decent political figures, and you, George, are one of them, that stands for working people. And I'd like to mention to your audience that, and to people watching that follow this show, if you agree and watch the show and agree with the viewpoints expressed, don't just watch. Please vote and support people like your good self, and support parties alike like in their own countries, and the Workers' Party in Britain. If you keep voting the same, you get the same. The oligarchy and the corporations of this world have not just increased their wealth significantly, but they've increased their grip on power and influence on government, whether that's through lobby groups, traditionally.
They have, Maurice, but it's not a sign of strength. It's I promise you, it's not a sign of strength. Thanks for a wonderful call, bringing the first half of the show to a close. Scott Ritter will be up in just a minute, but I want to reassure you that the fact that in the run-up to the Iraq War, against which I fought with Scott Ritter, shoulder to shoulder, until we could fight no more. I was on the BBC virtually every single day. I was called in Parliament virtually every time I stood up, because there was an understanding in the British media and in the Parliament that this was a really big call the country was making, and there was very significant opposition to it, and that not only do we have a moral obligation to allow the leader of the alternative point of view to express that point of view, but, well, we better listen because he might be right. And of course, they didn't listen hard enough. So the fact that they are now locking us out, in my case, literally, from the country, for fear of particularly my good wife suffering the depredations that she did at Gatwick Airport again, or worse, we cannot come back. So we are in the Far East. 5 of our children are with us, and we are a family reunited again. But it's a hell of a price to pay for having a point of view different to your government, and having, if you like, by the grace of God, the eloquence to express that point of view powerfully enough that many people have begun to listen to it. So, hey, get out of your own country. Imagine that. Maurice, you're right. There's no point in being just a passive audience. You have to do something about the conviction you may have been helped to gain by regularly watching this show. Scott Ritter, aforementioned, former Marine Corps intelligence officer, and when I knew him, a United Nations weapons inspector of the very highest rank, and who's had to become an anti-war campaigner with no peer at all. Scott Ritter, up after this short break. Stay tuned. I think you don't have to worry about these things with Mamdani, because my overwhelming feeling is that Mamdani is a phony. He has as much intention of doing these things as, you know, I compare him to a figure in British Labour history who became briefly famous in the US when Joe Biden was found to have plagiarized him during a presidential run some decades ago. But that man's name was Neil Kinnock. He used to talk all this flowery, far-left guff like Mamdani does, but he had no intention whatsoever of actually doing anything about it, of doing any of it. So there's no chance whatsoever that Mamdani is going to defund the New York Police Department.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, you've got half an hour left to vote on the poll. Is the Epstein Files cover-up to protect Trump, yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll on the YouTube stream, or if you are one of those and such as those, if you're on my patreon.com/George Galloway, you can also vote for there. Scott Ritter and I, we started out, I suppose, in quite different political places. Now we're brothers in arms. We're brothers in arms for peace, which can be a pretty bloody position to be in. He joins us now again. Scott, great to talk to you again. There's so many wars that I need to talk to you about. I almost daren't digress into the farce in the United States over the Epstein affair. I was arguing with your friend and mine, Garland Nixon, earlier, that this will not succeed. This obfuscation, this refusal to obey the decisions of the Congress on the timing and the extent of disclosure and so on, and then this ludicrous plastering of every page of thousands and thousands of pages rendered indecipherable by the simple application of printer's ink in the name of redaction. I don't think that's going to work. Do you?
You know, I'm conventionally, no, it shouldn't work. The American people should be outraged and should put pressure on their elected representatives to seek the truth, because the crimes that are alleged are crimes that no society can tolerate. And, you know, on a scale that appears to be mind-boggling. But I've lost faith in the American people to differentiate between right and wrong. We now have a politicized citizenry who seems to have jettisoned, basic, ethical norms and values in favor of, partisanship, political partisanship. We have a literal cult of personality in power today, a literal cult of personality. I mean, this is a man who he violates the law on a regular basis, and one of the most recent violations is the renaming of the John F. Kennedy Center as the Trump John F. Kennedy. It's an absolute violation of the law, and why would he do this? This is a man who's so narcissistic that in order to keep the World Cup alive, FIFA had to give him a peace prize that they manufactured out of thin air just to assuage his ego. And this is a man who, under normal circumstances, should be run out of town, tarred and feathered on a plank. But instead, we've elevated him, we, the collective American people who are, in his political orbit, we've elevated him to some sort of saint-like figure that literally will sit in the White House, bow his satanistic head, while people, ostensibly Christians, lay hands on him as if he is a conduit to the Lord Almighty, a vector of biblical power and proportion. So I think actually that Trump is going to get away with this because he has infected American democracy with the sickness of the cult of personality.
We've been together so long, Scott, you've begun to read my mind, because you literally took some of the words, many of them, that I was going to put to you. There can never have been a more debased Elmer Gantry figure than Donald Trump, and yet there he is kissing the wall of a Roman structure in Jerusalem that Jesus declared to be the product of apostasy, called for it to be torn down. He said that what Levin said on the Hanukkah affair, that he was the first Jewish president, he said twice, it's true, it's true. Was it literally true? Who knows? In other circumstances, who would care? But the point I'm trying to make is these people are never done wearing the Sacred Heart on their sleeve. They're never done telling us what Christians they are, when in fact they blaspheme daily against the Lord, and they practice what is, you called it satanic, it's definitely heathen idea of what they call Judeo-Christianity. You and I are about to celebrate Christmas. The people who are the Judeo part of that equation, they don't celebrate Christmas. They believe that Jesus is boiling in a pit of his own excrement. They believe that Jesus' mother, Holy Mary, was a prostitute, and that Jesus' father was a passing Roman soldier. Well, I'm a Christian, so I'm not a Judeo-Christian. And I don't know if these people who keep talking like that even know the blasphemy of which they speak. But laying on of hands, speaking in tongues, to a guy guilty of just about every sin known to man, and it would appear one or two hitherto not known to man. It's really a rum affair, isn't it?
It is, George. You know, I yearn for the day in America where we didn't pretend to have a state religion. It's prohibited by the Constitution. I come from a generation where religion was a private affair. You went to church on Sunday or you didn't go to church on Sunday. You took catechism or you didn't take catechism. You read the Torah or you didn't read the Torah. No one cared because it was your business. Your relationship with a supreme being was personal and private and protected. Today we live in an America that has, allowed the notion of a state religion to be incorporated into a state ideology, this Judeo-Christian perversion. And I agree with you. I'm not here to denigrate any religion. I'm not going to do that. I will say this, though. Keep it out of my I almost swore there. Keep it out of my country. Okay, my Constitution protects your right to have a religion. You keep your religion out of my Constitution. You keep your religion out of my daily life. You keep your religion out of my life. That's just the way it's got to be. Instead, we have a class of people now who have empowered themselves politically, people like Ted Cruz, who portends to be a Christian, but says that he chose the political life he is leading today because of the need to defend Israel and to defend the Jewish faith. These are people who believe in the rapture. They believe in the book of Revelations as a literal manifestation of God's will on earth. And it may be. I'm not here to question them except to say the following. If God is indeed an all-powerful being, he doesn't need Ted Cruz's help to bring on Armageddon. If God is all power, all knowing, all seeing, God will bring Armageddon onto the humankind when God wants to. And he doesn't need the help of Ted Cruz or anybody else who is promulgating Christian Zionism in the hope of speeding up Armageddon. That basically says you believe in nothing. If you believe that you can encourage the coming of the rapture, you are saying that God is not all powerful, God is not all seeing, God is not all everything, that you are more powerful, God, and there's nothing more satanistic than the notion of man being more powerful than God. And yet today in America, we are governed by people who seem to believe just that.
Amen. I've actually been to Armageddon, Scott. It's not that far, maybe 80 kilometers or so from the Gaza Strip. It's a hell of a place, and it's not somewhere or something I am myself keen to revisit. But turning to these wars, we'll not have time, although you're always generous, to discuss them all. But is it really true that Netanyahu is pressing Donald Trump to back another Israeli attack on Iran? And if so, what could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Yes, it appears that the Israelis are taking umbrage at Iran's efforts to reconstitute legitimate uranium enrichment programs and processes that were destroyed during the 12-day war. You have the ongoing refurbishment of Natanz. You have the Iranians seeking to investigate the Fordow underground uranium enrichment facility to see what damage was done there and what can be recovered. This is the legitimate right of a sovereign state that was carrying out actions that are permissible under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, actions that were, at the time of their destruction, fully monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency's safeguards program. So Israel has taken umbrage because Israel has decided that Iran, the law, international law, does not apply to Iran, that Israel gets to dictate, the legal realities that Iran must operate in. And now that Iran is not playing the game, submitting to the will of America and Netanyahu when it comes to its nuclear program, Israel is talking about finishing the job. What could go wrong? Everything. Let's just remind everybody that the 12-day war ended when Netanyahu got on a panicked phone call with Donald Trump and begged the United States to bring an end to this conflict because the Iranian missiles were starting to bring about real pain, real suffering. It was exposing the real fact that Israel could not defend itself, regardless of the fact that everybody in the world had rallied around Israel and was providing multiple layers of ballistic missile defense, the most sophisticated in the world, by the way. They couldn't stop the Iranian missiles. The Iranian missiles today are more numerous and of a higher quality than the ones that were fired against Israel during the 12-day war. Iran has reconstituted its ballistic missile production capability. It is producing some of those advanced missiles known to mankind today. And if Israel were to resume military operations against Iran, this would not be a 12-day drawn-out affair. This would be a conflict that would end in a matter of hours, if not just a few days. Iran understands. They learned a lot from the first 12-day war. And they know what Israel is capable of, and they know what they are capable of. And they will seek to bring Israel to its knees in a much quicker timeline than what happened before. I think the good news is that the United States recognizes this reality and will be doing everything it can to keep Netanyahu in his cage.
Yeah, you'll probably have a price, though, for staying in his cage, and your long-suffering taxpayers know what I'm talking about. Now, I just saying to Garland, I feel a bit of a chump because I was certain, not certain, but near certain, that Donald Trump would not invade Venezuela. I'm not as certain today. Are you?
Man, it makes no sense on any level. Militarily, we're not going to invade Venezuela. We don't have the resources to invade Venezuela. We have the ability to carry out limited military strikes. We, of course, have the ability to do, standoff strikes of strategic locations using, bombers and aircraft and such. But we don't have the ability to meaningfully put boots on the ground. We can seize radio stations. We can seize presidential palaces. We can do things of this nature. But that's short term. We can't sustain that. We can't, go in with 4,000 Marines and call it a day. We'd have to follow up with 40,000 Marines, then 100,000 Marines, and then 700,000 American soldiers that we just simply don't have. So there's that. Then there's any Venezuela operation conducted with boots on the ground will fail. And this will be the end of the Trump administration's presidency. Yes, he's a 4-year president, but we have midterm elections coming up. And if Donald Trump gets us involved in a quagmire in Venezuela, that's the end of the Trump presidency. The opposition, no matter how unorganized they are right now, will regain power in Congress. And then Trump will be paralyzed with impeachment after impeachment after impeachment because he is a criminal and they will impeach, even though they may not throw him out of office. And he has to know this. And so hopefully that will be a restraint on his actions as well. The only chance he has of removing Maduro from power and achieving changes through covert action. But again, you don't want a Bay of Pigs type covert action. You need a successful covert action. And I don't believe the CIA is prepared to do that at this time. And so I continue to believe, despite everything I'm hearing and seeing and reading, that Donald Trump is not stupid enough to invade Venezuela or carry out large-scale military operations against Venezuela, because it will be the end of the Trump presidency. And this man is the supreme narcissist who doesn't want his legacy to be that of, a man who has been impeached 2 or 3 more times. And let's make it very clear, too. Given the fact that Donald Trump has politicized political retribution, he's operationalized it. Donald Trump has to be careful, because if the wrong people, from Trump's perspective, seize executive power in 2028, Donald Trump's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And he has to know this. So I'm hopeful that he and the people who are dependent upon his political success understand there will be dire, indeed fatal consequences to him politically if he moves against Venezuela.
Now, a person we both used to admire somewhat, Tulsi Gabbard, now the Director of National Intelligence, therefore in a key position in the deep state, yesterday denounced the deep state for seeking to drag the United States deeper and deeper into a war with Russia in the Ukraine. She scolded, more than scolded, she excoriated Reuters for publishing lies. She called them actual lies about Russian intentions, Russian ability to carry out fake intentions. She really gave them the works, and full marks to her for that. I continue to believe, and I will until the world goes up in nuclear smoke, that we've got more chance of ending the danger of World War III in the Ukraine with Trump's administration than we ever would have with a Kamala Harris administration. I still hold to that. Many don't like that I do, but I still hold to that. And I'm hoping that Tulsi Gabbard was speaking with her master's voice in this. Do you think she was?
I do actually believe that Tulsi Gabbard is speaking in, not just with his voice, but with his consent. Look, as you have heard me say in the 2 previous segments of this show about the cult of personality and about Venezuela, anybody who thinks I'm up here carrying Donald Trump's water hasn't the foggiest clue what they're talking about. I don't carry his water or anybody's water.
Me too.
But I am a proponent of avoiding nuclear Armageddon with Russia and promoting better relations between the United States and Russia. I believe it is the principal policy direction that the United States should be pursuing at this time, and it's where I am putting the bulk of my effort at this time. And having said that, Donald Trump is going up against the deep state. He's going up against, Europe. He's going up against economic forces that have tied their future to the Ukraine conflict. And it's difficult for him because he isn't as strong a leader as people would like to believe he is. He is a man who, when physically confronted by people, he wilts like a flower in hot water. So what's happened here is that he has empowered people like Marco Rubio and others, Keith Kellogg, Scott Bessent, the director of the CIA, whose name is skipping my mind right now, Mike Radcliffe, I think.
Patel.
These are Russophobes. These are people who hate Russia and have been promoted. Yeah, and they just hate Russia. So, Trump has a hard time, putting them down, confronting them, etc. And what happens is they start promulgating lies. I mean, the CIA, I just want people, again, just to reflect on this. As Donald Trump was going to meet with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, the CIA's senior Russian expert was briefing him on an airplane at the direction of the CIA director. This Russian expert, a lady, was the national intelligence officer for Russia in 2016, and she spearheaded the effort to smear Donald Trump as a Russian agent. She despises Donald Trump. She hates Donald Trump. And yet there she was briefing Donald Trump in preparation for the biggest summit meeting that, has taken in recent times. And she did this with the full permission of a CIA director who whitewashed her account months prior in June, before Tulsi Gabbard released the truth about what had happened in 2016 and the false accusations put out. Radcliffe published his own 5-page declassified paper that sought to whitewash the CIA's culpability and whitewash the involvement of this particular lady. So this is what Donald Trump's dealing with, and the CIA is actively releasing information to outlets like Reuters through people like Keith Kellogg that are designed to, promote a specific narrative that is, undermining everything Donald Trump's trying to achieve right now. This is a very difficult problem for Donald Trump. I mean, solving the Ukraine conflict is not an easy problem. He has the political will. Look, this man published a national security strategy for all the people that hate Donald Trump, and there are many. Read that document. And I know you're not going to be happy with China, and you're definitely not going to be happy with Western, the Western Hemisphere, and the New Monroe Doctrine and the Trump corollary to the doctrine. Yes, there's problems in this, but the thing that can kill us all is Russia, and Russia is no longer listed as an enemy or adversary. Russia is listed as a partner of strategic stability. We are on the right direction. This time last year, we were talking about a greater than 50% chance of a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. Today, the official policy line of the United States is that Russia is a strategic partner of international stability. We're headed in the right direction. We have to give Donald Trump, this narcissist, this weak man, a fighting chance. And Tulsi Gabbard, I believe, now is giving voice to some of the big problems. There is a deep state, this permanent bureaucracy of intelligence and defense officials linked to the military-industrial complex and Congress, who don't want peace, who profit off of war, endless wars. Well, these endless wars are going to kill us because they will lead to a nuclear war. Chris Donahue, the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, the senior NATO commander, 4-star general, recently talked about Kaliningrad and said, if NATO wanted to, of course, they could take Kaliningrad, a Russian territory, the former Königsberg territory of East Prussia that Russia received at the end of the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945. He said, we could take it out, and we will in a future war. Well, a Chinese online portal using data from U.S. war games and overlaying that with the current strategic thinking of, notable Russian strategists like Sergei Karaganov, said, if NATO and the United States attacks Kaliningrad within 5 hours, 35 to 60 million Europeans will be killed and all of Europe will be destroyed. I don't want that. Nobody should want that. And yes, that's the direction we're heading if we let this deep state continue to prevent the bringing to a close this tragic conflict in Ukraine.
I saw that quote and I retailed it, and I urged my audience to remember the name Kaliningrad, because it might be the last word on our lips. We truly are on the edge of the apocalypse. Let's just repeat it, if you will, Scott. In 5 hours, 35 to 50 million European citizens would be dead, and Europe would be completely destroyed if NATO's threats to Kaliningrad were to be carried out. I mean, you and I are of a generation, me more than you, but you also, and you professionally were engaged in it, to fear the outbreak of nuclear war, knowing that it would existentially change, and at least in North America and Europe, it would be the end of humanity. And yet these jokers, with their gold lanyards on their shoulders, weighing them, pulling them to one side, a kilo of gold leaf on their uniforms, they are daily pronouncing this kind of madness. And nobody, you said you'd lost faith in the American people. I'm beginning to lose faith in all people, in humanity, because how can it be that you can hear your military leaders making such threats, know what the potential consequences could be, and yet you remain calm and unprotesting? I simply don't understand it.
I don't either, George. It's mind-boggling to me. You know, last year in November, a man named Thomas Buchanan, he was is the director of plans, an admiral, Navy admiral, director of plans for Strategic Command. That means he does the nuclear war planning. He writes the nuclear war plan. He's familiar with the nuclear war plan. He spoke to a think tank, CSIS, about the current status. And when asked a question, his answer about, is Russia bluffing? Could there be a nuclear war with Russia, et cetera? He said, we are ready to fight. Again, the words he used was to enter into a nuclear exchange with Russia that we would win. And, he defined victory in stark terms, meaning that we would end this conflict with sufficient nuclear strike capability to still dominate the nuclear balance of power in the world after we destroyed Russia and by extension China. Because I just want to remind people that there's a new nuclear employment plan that was promulgated under the Biden administration, initiated under the previous Trump administration, that says because China's nuclear arsenal is expanding, we can't leave it untouched in case of a nuclear war with Russia, because the potential then with China would retain more nuclear weapons than we have. So if we go to nuclear war with Russia, we will simultaneously destroy China, because we have to, in order to retain our victory status of having more nuclear weapons left after a nuclear war than anybody else. But then he said something interesting, and it's something that people should follow up on. He said, maybe it's time we be honest with the American people about what winning a nuclear war would look like. Because in short, the democracy we call America will no longer exist. American democracy will be over. The people who survive will live under a permanent military dictatorship. There will be no free market. Everything will be rationed. Life as you know it will cease to exist. And I'm somebody who joined the military to defend the Constitution, defend the American way of life. And the idea that I would willingly embark on an enterprise that I knew that even if we won, it would mean the death of the nation I am sworn to defend. Why in God's name would I ever enter into that, down that path? And this is what people need to reflect. I'm writing a big article right now. I hope to finish it soon, that touches on this. So we are at an existential moment in our respective societies and in humanity. And this is the question we have to ask. And Europeans need to ask themselves, is it worth everything? what you're doing in Ukraine? Are you willing to sacrifice everything? Because you will not win this war. And if you live, you will wish you had died. Why are you doing this? What values are you defending when you embark on a course of action that is inherently and inevitably suicidal to the very cause that you purport to support? Democracy, the European Union, this wonderful experiment in humanity will all cease to exist even if you win. Why? People have to start asking this question. Why do they support this outcome?
Well, that's such a powerful point to end on. Scott Ritter, as always, a brilliant, dazzling tour of the horizon across much of the world. We're greatly indebted to you now, tonight, and always. Scott Ritter, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. While I gather my breath from that brilliant final soliloquy of Scott Ritter, which should be heard throughout the world and by every person with the ability to affect the course of things. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to the end. Stay tuned. Fabulous. Two great calls in a row there. One from California, one from Orlando. I think that Japan is walking on extremely thin ice in the provocations that they are currently allowing the US to manipulate them into making. I've spent a lot of time in China. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. There is visceral feelings about Japan in China. Of all of the countries of the world, China will never, ever, ever, ever forgive what Japan did to the Chinese people. They murdered more than 20 million Chinese. The war, which for us started in 1939 and for you started considerably more than that, further on than that. Japan invaded China in 1931 and didn't leave until their defeat in 1945. They further invaded other parts of China in 1936 and they killed 20 million Chinese people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Boston, where Jessica wants to talk about Epstein. Welcome, Jessica. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, George. How are you?
By His grace, very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, this thing with the pedophile Epstein thing is just really, it's just so sick. Because people, I voted for Trump, which is, honestly, I regret it. Because I opened my eyes, and this was the top of the cherry, like I really opened my eyes. It's like, how can we protecting criminals, pedophiles? It's just insane. But the reason why, the excuses that my side always bringing out, it's like, if Trump wasn't the Epstein list, the Democrat will should just, bring it out a long time ago. But the reason for why the Democrats never ever even talk about bringing the list of the pedophiles is simple because they are in the list too. All of them, the whole U.S. government, this administration, past administration, on and on and on. That's the reason for why, because they both protect each other. Both parties are the same. So obviously, that's the reason for why we don't want to see, never, ever going to see those big names on the list. And it's not only about the U.S. government. It's all the governments around the world, even, in kingdoms, people involved in this, because definitely Epstein was a tool from the Mossad, from the Israeli government. And that's the way they blackmail the whole world. They can do whatever they want and no question asked. Just do it, or the file's going to be exposed, or pictures, or videos, or who knows. But that's my personal opinion, and I think many people, many Americans, we agree with that.
It's, of course, a widely held opinion, Jessica, and it's good that you came here to express it. There's a difference of opinion, I see. There's a fella called MOATS, I think his name is, or Benz. Anyway, there's an American conservative pro-Israel guy who's got a big following and who does from time to time produce very good and very powerful material. He's arguing that that Epstein was in fact an American agent rather than an Israeli one, and that he played an absolutely key role in the Iran-Contra affair, and that in fact was the source of his wealth and power amongst the American elite. I haven't been able to deeply dive into it, but as someone who remembers the Iran-Contra affair very much and very vividly, I will give the gentleman a wider, deeper hearing. He argued that Adnan Khashoggi, the Saudi arms dealer, was the key figure in the Iranian side of the Iran-Contra affair, and that the key figure in the American side of the affair and the American relationship to the Contra in Nicaragua, an issue in which I was deeply engaged at the time. That's why it's so very important and indelibly printed on my memory, was a man called Pottinger. Now, I am going to dive more deeply into this, if possible, get a guest about it. Others say this is a deflection by this gentleman to cast people's attention away from Israel. But I say, as you've heard me say before, this is a false dichotomy. It's not a question of whether Mossad works for the CIA or the CIA works for Mossad. It's not a question of whether Israel runs the United States or the Americans run Israel. This is a false dichotomy because they are the same thing. The Mossad and the CIA and the MI6 and the Canadian and Australian and New Zealand outfits, they are the same thing. And the United States and Israel are the same thing. It is, in truth, the 51st state of the Union, without anyone ever being consulted. It's the only explanation for the deeply damaging state policies in Washington which ruin the US's reputation and position everywhere in the world, all to support a country of 8 million people, tiny, smaller than the Kruger National Park in South Africa. Why would you do that? Why would you give all this money? Why would you lose all this reputation to support these people? Why would you constantly be parading outside that Roman wall in Jerusalem and kissing it with a hat on that doesn't belong to you, for you are not, whatever Donald Trump says, you are not of that religion. So we'll see. I myself, I'm interested in it, but it makes no material difference to me because I believe that these two entities are the same thing. But, of course, the depth and, or as Scott Ritter just put it, the sheer scale, the industrial scale of what the Epstein affair is uncovering is to some people surprising, to everybody shocking. And we've only seen, like the captain of the Titanic, the tip of the iceberg that is going to sink us. Jessica in Boston, thanks for that call. I'm going to now close the poll. Is the Epstein Files cover-up to protect Trump? Well, overwhelmingly people say yes. 85% on Telegram, 78% on X, 81% on the YouTube community poll, 85% on the YouTube stream, and wait for it, 100% on the patreon.com/George Galloway ballot box. 25,000 people voted in that poll. Now, great news on the podcast this week. Well, there almost always is. MOATS has entered the top 10 political podcasts in Serbia, Zimbabwe, and the UAE. We're in the top 20 in Bahrain and South Africa, and the top 60 in Australia, the UK, Russia, and Norway. How about that? What a spread of languages, cultures, and countries. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now, and you can listen to the weekly podcast on moats.tv. Once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review. Let's go to Khalid in Nova Scotia on being in exile. Khalid, welcome.
You on, George, and I want to say to you, welcome to exile. You're now a citizen of the earth. I'm here in Halifax not because of I like the cold. I'm here also because of my own form of exile. It appears that words and truth is a thing that people tend to avoid everywhere. Now, this show has been very, very interesting. Dennis gave me a segue to say what I want to say, and Scott Ritter just put the nail on the coffin. The reality is that there is no winner. There is no such thing as a winner in a nuclear war. There is no winner. We all lose. That's absolute. That's absolute. The thing that you also mentioned is you took away a piece of my thunder, but it's the truth, and I appreciate that. The deep state, what we term the deep state, or what people think of as the deep state, and we think of when Trump talked about the deep state, we thought of America. But the deep state is deeper than America. It's Europe, it's Australia, it's actually global. And so, the thing is, the majority of the people in the world don't want that. The majority of the people of the world want peace. We want a way of how we can get along and just live our lives as normal human beings. And so what the challenge for us, George, now is to reimagine what the world needs to be today, tomorrow, and 10 years forward. We understand the complexity of what's going on, the problems and all of it. It's becoming very, very manifest. You can't see it, you're blind. So, but the issue is we have to reimagine what tomorrow, and those words need to be.
Yeah, I think we're losing you, Khalid, which is a pity because it was a quite brilliant exposition. Having toured Nova Scotia on speaking tours, including Halifax, I can't congratulate you on your choice of exile, at least not in the wintertime. A very, very beautiful place, but practically as cold a place as I have ever been. I am now in the new world, in the rising world. The sun rises in the east, and it is rising in the east. As a matter of fact, it's almost 4 o'clock in the morning, so it very practically will shortly be rising, but metaphorically, I am now traveling from here. I'll go to many parts of the rising world in the east. The people of the BRICS, the people of the SCO, and I'm reconciled to that fact. The three main things I love about my life long in Britain are my work, my family, and my football. And by the grace of God, I can still do all three right where I am and right where I will be tomorrow. So you can call it exile. I did call it exile, but it's not as cold an exile as yours in Nova Scotia. A lovely call, a brilliant call. Some comments now. Moss Patchouli says, I doubt the British government cares if these protesters go on hunger strike. They want most of us dead anyway. And Billo Gali says, Salams, George. I feel you've been treated very shabbily by the British government. You had served your country for a very long time, and even now you are still doing so. Well, thank you for seeing that. I'm against the British government's policy, not for anybody else's sake, but for the sake of my own people and the health and future of my own country. And Pauline Wooding says, it's never down to just one man. You should be talking about the US administration. And T.G. Wilson says, when exposing a crime is treated as committing a crime, you are being ruled by criminals. Edward Snowden he attribute that to, but I have a shout for being the author of that quote at a Julian Assange rally in a church in Euston in London. Must check that out further. Nikia says, why does the US government believe it has the right to starve and impoverish people while inflicting horrendous violence on others, simply because they do not wish to live under US influence? I don't know if they really believe it. Maybe they do. Maybe when pursuing manifest destiny and butchering the buffalo and leaving the carcasses to rot so that you would starve a family of what they called Indians. Maybe that sense of exceptionalism, that sense of manifest destiny blinds them to the utter immorality of such actions. Maybe they felt that they had a right, maybe that they were doing these poor savages a favour by infecting the blankets you were handing out to them with smallpox spores, so that the people would be wiped out. They didn't die from a lack of buffalo. They didn't die from the hot lead fired by George Armstrong Custer. Well, let's kill them with smallpox. Let's infect them. Let's cut them down like daisies. Maybe a people who came to statehood on such a genocidal basis, maybe, just maybe, they do think they have the right to do what it is, Nikia, that you rightly accuse them of. This might be the last call. It's Mohammed in Missouri on Epstein. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Hello there, Mr. Galloway. Good evening or good morning. It's good afternoon here. How are you today?
Yeah, it's great. It's good afternoon for you, and it's almost Fajr here in Jakarta.
Yes,
I'm just waiting for the call of prayer to issue out from this window here. Anyway, go ahead, Mohammed. What do you want to say about Epstein?
Well, Epstein, first of all, we did not see a funeral. We did not see a burial. How can we be sure if he's dead or alive? The Israelis had buried a sergeant or whatever that officer that they claim he was abducted from Gaza. They buried a body or such, or they had a funeral, to find out a few months later that he was still alive and well. That's one, very important thing. And the other thing is this. Many of these girls, they've been abducted from their families, and nobody knows who they are. So how can we tell where is these girls? These parents, they're looking for their kids. This is a lot of cover-ups. There is a lot of families where they are crying out to find out about their daughters, and maybe their boys, because these people from the Gulf, they love boys too. I'm sorry, I am older than you. I am kind of sick, but it's making me sicker. I love your show, and I watch you all the time. So I appreciate what you're doing for the Palestinians, because I'm not an exile, but I'm in the West here for over 50 years. I appreciate your show again, and I love you, and my regard to you and your family.
Well, Muhammad, such a beautiful call. Don't thank me for doing my duty. La shukra ala wajib. I do what I do because it's my duty to do so. But to hear from a venerable gentleman like yourself that you appreciate it is obviously important to me, but perhaps more importantly, it's important to my children, because they then know that a man called Muhammad in Missouri was talking on my father's show and highly about the stands that I have taken, the actions that I have pursued. I don't do them for that. I don't do them for fame, and definitely not for fortune. If I had taken other political paths in my life, I might have gone far. But I would have been lying to my conscience. And when I meet my maker, which could be any time, could be with this next breath, then I wouldn't be able to justify what it was that I had done. But right now, I am ready to meet my maker when that time comes. Meanwhile, my good wife Gayatri is in the hall. It might not be the studio that we wanted, Gayatri, and probably not as good as our next studio, but it's been a terrific show, don't you think?
Yeah, wonderful. Not bad for a Monday. It's already in our part of the world, and I'm not kidding you. The call for prayer is literally being called behind us through the window. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up quickly, won't we? Shall we?
You got nothing else to say?
No, I do. I just...
it's not like you to have nothing to say.
At 4 o'clock in the morning?
You're trying to fool them.
No, it's just funny that the show that we've been talking about, what popped on my mind was the concept of a Russophrenia.
Russophrenia is a great word. Who coined that?
Well, from what I understand, it was Brian McDonald.
I think it was Brian McDonald, Brian McDonald, an Irish man in Russia. I was going to say in Moscow, but he doesn't actually live in Moscow.
But he's in Russia. He coined it quite a while ago.
Yeah, he has a Russian wife and children. Very, very fine intellect. Brilliant journalist. He's worked all over Fleet Street, but he's now made his peace with and his home and hearth in Russia. He coined this phrase, Russophrenia, which is the ability to simultaneously believe that Russia is losing, is vulcanizing washing machine parts to make its weapons, is unable to raise enough soldiers, and is going bankrupt, and has a president who's had multiple cancers, heart attacks, strokes, and employs multiple doubles, and is otherwise upper volta with rockets. The ability to believe that, and also to believe at the same time that Russia is just coming to get you. It's going to roll all over Germany, all over Poland, all over the Netherlands. There's a headline in the Dutch papers. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. What? To Rotterdam? For what?
Yes.
I'd rather go to Rotterdam than Redcar, where the People's Poet talked the other day, where people say the Russians are coming. What? To Redcar? For what purpose? Would Russia, the biggest country in the world, want to come to Redcar? Think! The fools who say such things. This is Russophrenic. It's Russophrenia. We need to make that word better known, yeah?
Exactly. It's the idea that Russia is collapsing and conquering the world at the same time. It's outrageous.
You said it much more concisely than I did.
But on that point, just to close, Alan from Wigan says, May I remind you all that Putin's annual address to his people, questions and answers. This is a man that was claimed 4 years ago was insane and had umpteen cancers. 4 hours he answered all manners, all questions with no teleprompter, and the collective West should be ashamed because they were in the front row as well.
They were, and we've seen them at work in the front row. We've been there in the auditorium when they were in the front row. I'm glad, actually, that our texter has brought that up, because I'd just like to underscore it. Vladimir Putin speaks for 4 hours without a teleprompter in answer to totally unscripted questions, many of them submitted by viscerally hostile, right-wing, Russia-hating journalists who are nonetheless freely allowed to operate in Russia and actually to sit 6 feet from the desk at which the Russian president is sitting answering their hostile questions. 4 hours. Now, Keir Starmer could maybe speak for 40 minutes before you fell into a coma. Donald Trump, who does have a teleprompter, could speak for 4 hours, but at the end of it, men in white coats would come onto the platform and lead him away to a padded cell. Vladimir Putin speaks for 4 hours, whether you agree with his point of view or not, with a breadth of understanding and knowledge of economics, of politics, of military affairs, of geostrategic affairs, of history. He could take 4 hours to bring you up to Catherine the Great. The Russian leadership of Putin and Lavrov, compared to the top two in any Western country, just be fair to yourself. Just be honest with yourself. Make that comparison of that top two with your top two, and I think you'll agree with me. I hope so, anyway, or that you'll come back for more on Wednesday night. A big thanks to tonight's big donors, and bear in mind all it takes is $1 or £1 to become a member of our exclusive MOATS club. But here are tonight's top donors. John, Derek Blackmore, Henry Joy Hopkins, George J. Ashkar Jr., who's a fantastic weekly donor, by the way, and Vin Ferguson. A big thanks to each and every one of you for donating, for being here this evening, or in our case, this early morning, where the call to prayer has been and gone. It's a new day. It's Monday already. I told you, the sun rises in the east. Now, we're back live on Wednesday with a special Christmas Eve edition.
Yep, correct.
Are we going to preview it? I mean, we've got some of the biggest guests.
Yes. Just the people will love it. Tune in on Christmas Eve.
You really will.
For our most
I mean, you may be busy wrapping presents and preparing Christmas lunch and so on, but you can always have us on in the background. So, God willing, we'll see you on Wednesday. But if we don't, enjoy your Christmas. Have a very merry, peaceful Christmas. From Gayatri and me, we'll wish you that again next Wednesday, but just in case you're not able to join us. It's been marvellous for me. I think I can speak for my wife and say for us. It's been quite a year for us, as we will discuss on Wednesday. It's been a year like no other ever in both of our lives, but many people have suffered far worse. So, it's been wonderful. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.